So that was Mark Ruffalo on why he's endorsing Bernie Sanders for president again in 2020 as he did in 2016. Of course, Mark Ruffalo being a major actor, a major figure in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, obviously a figure that millions of Americans know even if they don't follow politics. So that endorsement has some real weight. For me, I don't really put extra stock into celebrity endorsements. It's not something that matters to me more than any other form of endorsement, but they are important to many and we can't ignore them. But the reason I'm talking about Ruffalo's endorsement isn't about who Ruffalo is, but about the fact that he really laid out in simple, succinct terms why Bernie Sanders has to be the one for progressives in 2020, and why he's been the one for generations now. Ruffalo puts it very clearly. Bernie Sanders has a consistency of message. Bernie Sanders has led now, and he's led for generations, and the rest of the United States, in many, many ways, has caught up to Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders never really needed to evolve like Barack Obama did on LGBTQ issues, or Hillary Clinton, or Elizabeth Warren even, who sort of evolved from a Republican to a Democrat. He never needed to do that because he's always been right on the core issues at hand. The rights of women, the rights of LGBTQ people, the rights of workers, the income inequality in the United States, the wealth inequality, the power differential between corporations and individuals, the way that trade deals have harmed American workers and enriched the American elite. On all of these things, before they happened, as they were happening, and as people were starting to analyze them, Bernie Sanders has been right. And so Mark Ruffalo puts it perfectly when he says that America, they've just been catching up to what this cat's been doing for generations now. That's why Bernie Sanders has to be the one. Because at the end of the day, the president is, an official office holder, but they're also a reflection of the society they lead. And so a lot of the ugliness you see in the current United States is reflected by the fact that the current president, Donald Trump, has ugly views about minorities, about non-Christians, about women, and how he's given credence to these views in millions of people in the United States and around the world. Bernie Sanders, with his consistently progressive message, will be a reflection of a better America, a more just America, a more dignified America, a more equal America. And because the United States is the world's most powerful and influential country, a progressive president will equal a more progressive world. Maybe that sounds too optimistic for you, but I have to believe that with an American progressive in the Oval Office for the first time in generations, you will see the world move in a different direction, or at least have to deal with the reality that the American president is not a center-right Democrat or a right-wing Republican, but a true blue progressive who is there for working-class people, who's there for the downtrodden, who's there for the marginalized, who's there for the people that have been excluded formally or informally from political and social and economic levers of power for far too long. That's Bernie Sanders. And so when Mark Ruffalo says he's going to get in there and he's going to fight for us, you know he is, because that's what he's been about his whole career. A lot of people don't like Bernie Sanders. He's still one of the most popular politicians in the country, but a lot of people don't like him. But the reason you don't like Bernie Sanders is because you know who he is and you disagree with him. And in a democracy, that's fine. But you have to give credit where credit is due. You know who Bernie Sanders is. You've known who he is for generations. You know who he is today. And you have a damn good idea who he's going to be over the next 4 to 8 years when he's the next president of the United States. And there's a lot of other great Democratic candidates. A lot of them bring something good to the table. Mark Ruffalo notes this. But none of them in any meaningful way have the consistency of progressive message and that consistent desire to fight for working people no matter what. Bernie Sanders takes these positions not just because they're popular, but because they're right. Bernie Sanders did not become a champion of women's rights or LGBTQ rights because they were popular. When Bernie Sanders started supporting pride parades and marching in pride parades, they were not popular. The rights of LGBTQ Americans were far from established. Their safety in society was far from guaranteed, either under Republican or Democratic rule. And yet Bernie Sanders stood with them as brothers and sisters. That's really what it's all been about. When unions fell out of favor in both the Republican and Democratic parties, as working class people and their standards of living were seen as barriers to prosperity, Bernie Sanders stood strong and stayed loyal to the American labor movement. When the neoliberal turn encouraged increased privatization and deregulation from both Republican and Democratic administrations, Bernie Sanders made it clear that public services are better than privatized services, and that the public regulations are essential to protect workers, to protect communities, and to protect the environment. People are coming around on that. And so Mark Ruffalo puts it perfectly, guys. This is a great endorsement, not just because it comes from somebody famous that's going to maybe reach into pockets of American society that aren't politically engaged, but because at the end of the day, he really hammers it home. Bernie has been the best. Bernie is the best. Bernie will be the best. Bernie has fought for regular people. He'll continue to do so. And while some of the fellow Democratic challengers for the presidency have admirable qualities, they do not have that bedrock of consistent progressive activism for 40 plus years. That's why Bernie is the one. He has to be the one in 2020.